everyone. Thanks for joining us. This is Common Sense with myself, Roy Fleming, and John Schelling. Today, we've got Floyd Simons of Granted Consulting joining us. We're really excited to have both of you here, and especially you, Floyd, as your featured guest. We really wanted to hear about your background, Granted Consulting, and what it is that your business does, if you don't mind sharing.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. First of all, hello, everyone. My personal background is in founding and growing tech companies to the point of scalability and profitability. I've done a lot of work as well on the side, mentoring startups, scale-ups, and SMEs, or small, medium-sized enterprises over the years. And as part of that mission, I joined Granted as well, which is a very similar mission, namely unlock grants for SMEs in Canada. Right now, about 4.9% of small and medium-sized enterprises in Canada are leveraging government grants, which is a huge shame because almost 100% could. So there's a pretty significant gap there. And the reason for that is something when I joined Granted myself, I thought government grants would mostly be organized by government through a website, evergreen, easy peasy. That is not how that works at all. There are lots of small delivery organizations that pitch to government to distribute parts of buckets with their own targeting, their own processes that they change all the time in their own criteria. And they tend to not be super amazing per se at communication and transparency and things like that. So for any small and medium-sized enterprise, it can be quite difficult to stay on top of what's happening, where to go, what to do, and how to actually leverage it. And as a result, a lot of money is left on the table for many of these organizations. And at Granted, we have a research team. We stay on top of all those changes. We have relationships with many of those organizations to get more information. And effectively, what we do is we help those SMEs get grants that otherwise they might have trouble getting, basically. And we've helped over 800 companies since inception, which was in 2011, just after the 2008 crisis, basically, when we started doing this, about a 95% approval rate. And we focus in particular on the bread and butter that SMEs can leverage the most, which is hiring grants, training grants, and market expansion grants.
Well, thanks for that, Floyd. John Schelling here from TLS Financial. Maybe expand for our listeners a little bit on what the process is going through to apply for a grant and how they can align themselves strategically to better set themselves up for the grant that'll fit them.
That's a great question. We get a lot of inbound requests from people that have pursued some kind of activity recently, and then they're like, you know what, is there a grant so I can get some of that money back? That's generally not how grants work. They're really about enabling future strategic action. That's how the government likes looking at them as well. They want to enable companies to do something that otherwise they wouldn't have, that leads to economic impact. Effectively, what that means is, by and large, almost all grants are about doing the application, getting approved, then you can incur cost after that approval that then you have to pay for. And then later with those receipts, you can get reimbursed for some of it or all of it, depending on the grant you got. So it's really about thinking about the future and doing things that otherwise you might not have, and starting well in advance as opposed to thinking about it retroactively, basically. One other note that is relevant for some as well, because we get a lot of requests there as well, is that government doesn't like subsidizing or using grants for very small or early stage companies because the risk is higher. It doesn't lead to the economic impact they want it. And the way they look at that is you got to have at least $100,000 in revenue in the last fiscal year. That's when stuff starts opening up, and at least 2 full-time employees on payroll.
Yeah, that's some great information. Thanks, Floyd. I was just curious on your thoughts as, COVID-19 is about to round the corner going into 2021 here. Thank God we have a vaccine coming, but in the meantime, what should small and medium-sized businesses sort of expect from the grant process from a support standpoint? And what's the government looking to do you think, with grants as far as 2021 goes? But, what are your thoughts there?
Right. So as Granted came up in 2011, it was really in part also because after 2008 crisis, and as that started to abate, government really used a lot of grants. We see the same thing happening right now. We're coming out of a pretty bad crisis, but the end is in sight. And government's already announced, for example, they want to create 1 million new jobs in Canada. There'll be a lot of grants for that. So we expect hiring grants, market expansion grants, and 2021 is shaping up to be a record-breaking grant year. So if you're thinking about how to leverage them, now is a really good time to start doing that.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And in your estimation, how does Granted, first of all, make money? Like, how, just tell us what that process is, and then how do we reach it?
Yeah, also great questions. So how we normally work, we like being a client's fractional grant department where we are incentivized to get you as many grants as possible with the least amount of effort for you. Effectively, what that looks like is there's a dedicated grant consultant, for example, various catch-ups, you're tapped into a knowledge tool. We ask for a $1,500 annual retainer fee normally, which should be nominal compared to the amount of grants we can get you. Otherwise, we should consider not doing it. And there's a 20% success fee specifically based on the approved amount of the grant. And that is where our vast majority of our income comes from. And in that way, we are incentivized to get you as many grants as possible because that benefits us as well, effectively. Best way to find us would be to go to our website, granted.ca. There's a button there, get started, click on it. It'll get you to a calculator that gets you some results on what things might be grantable in your next year, for example. And that will also lead to a call and we can get started that way.
Thank you.
Thanks for that, Floyd. And on behalf of Roy and myself, I want to thank you for taking the time to be part of our Bottom Line Strategies presentation series. And we'll certainly, I think that's pretty exciting what's happening or what looking forward to 2021 as we go through this post-COVID, hopefully post-COVID situation and companies start to recover. And if there's lots of grant money out there, your services are going to be much needed. So again, reach out to Floyd through the contact information he gave, or you can alternatively reach out to Roy and I through our LinkedIn or emails, and we'll put you in touch with Floyd. And again, want to thank our listeners for joining us again on this second of our series of Bottom Line Strategies. And we look forward to seeing you again really soon with a new presentation and some new ideas on how to help your bottom line. Good night.
Thank you.